In the name of Allah, so I would like to first begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the one God to whom all praise is due. And I would like to greet all of you in the listening audience and the viewing audience in the greeting words of peace. We say it in the Arabic language of Assalamu alaikum,
Wa alaikum salam.
but in English it simply means peace be unto you. And this is the best greetings to greet each other with in a very unpeaceful time, the greeting words of peace of Assalamu alaikum. Of course, we know many of us may not know those greetings because when we were brought here, we were robbed of name, language, religion, and culture. And because we were robbed of that knowledge of self, we find ourselves in the condition that we are in. And that is why we want to talk about cooperative economics today. We want to explain a little bit of Knowledge for Life in the Raw Info Conference Series. And the reason why we call it Knowledge for Life, the Raw Info Conference Series, which actually came from my brother sitting in the audience, Brother Keith Landers, who is the chairman on the SCLC, my Christian leadership brother. Raw meaning unmixed and untampered with. So we wanted to give you the truth raw, unmixed and untampered with, because that is what we need today, is the raw truth as black people. We are dealing with cooperative economics. Now, you may see me sweating up here just a little bit, and it's not because I'm nervous, but they got these lights on and they are very hot. So you got to make sure you get you a towel before you come on up here. But we're talking about cooperative economics. So let us first go ahead and break down a little bit of cooperative economics. Cooperative economics is a type of common property ownership, such as when the residents of a multi-unit housing complex own shares in the corporation that owns the property, rather than owning their own unit. In Kwanzaa, the Swahili Ujima means to build and maintain our own stores, our own shops, and other businesses, and to profit from them together. Blueprint, because the subtitle is a blueprint for black survival for 2012. Blueprint is something intended as a guide for making something else. It is an arrangement, a plan, a design, a program, a project, a roadmap, a strategy, a system. Survival, meaning staying alive, a natural process resulting in the evolution of organisms best adapted to the environment, the continuation of life or existence. So with that, I want to bring up our first speaker, who is Mr. Marlon Aldridge, and he will introduce himself. So please let us give a hand to our brother Marlon Aldridge.
How's everybody doing?
Fine, sir.
All righty, as was stated, I'm Marlon Aldridge. I'm the president and CEO of the Black Man's Think Tank. How many of you are familiar with the Black Man's Think Tank? A couple of folks. We've been doing our conference for the last 12 years at St. Clair Community College, and we're going to have our 12th annual conference actually coming up April 13th and 14th. So make sure you mark your calendars for that and come out and participate with us.
Absolutely.
I am also a professor of physics at St. Clair Community College, and I'm happy to be here. Economics is, of course, a subject that is very dear to me. Our mission at the Black Man's Think Tank, of course, is to develop and support industry among black organizations and professionals. So, of course, economic development, industry development, and our participation in it is very important. Okay? In terms of a little bit of background about myself, I am a graduate of Morehouse College with a degree in physics, and I'm also an alumni of Wright State University with a degree in physics as well. So we're going to use a little bit of that problem solving and critical thinking skills that we learned in the areas of the science and apply those to area other areas of life, especially in the social sciences. So we're going to do that today as we discuss some economics. And more germane to our discussion tonight, we're going to talk about cooperative economics and why that is important as a strategy to help us develop our communities. Okay, so we're going to give you some strategies on that. We're going to give you a little bit of background about what we call co-ops. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well, and then of course at the end we'll open it up for any questions that you may have. Again, Steve, I appreciate your invite, and looking forward to participation with your audience as well. Well, I guess I had anticipated a projector. I don't know why I assumed that. But I do have a laptop here, so I'm basically going to be bringing some information from the laptop, but you're always welcome to stop me if you have any questions. We're going to have a format where you'll have the ability to be able to answer some questions. Steve talked about cooperative economics. It is a study, it's a field of economics, socialist economics, cooperative studies, political economy, which is concerned with cooperatives. Okay, and that's what we're going to confine our discussion to tonight, is the discussion of cooperatives, or what is sometimes called co-ops as well, which are an autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to meet their common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations through jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprises. What are some of the purposes of co-ops? Well, first, they provide their member owners with quality goods or services bought at or near wholesale prices. Okay. Second purpose, producing competitively priced quality goods and services to co-op members and to the general public as well. And then lastly, providing employment for its member owners and others. And of course, these will all be important benefits, especially to the African American community, as we see many of our communities, the urban cities in particular, being diminished in their economies. So this type of strategy, i.e. Investing in co-ops, starting co-ops, is a very important strategy in terms of helping us to develop our economies. I want to talk to you a little bit about the U.S. industry in terms of co-ops. They have, depending on what state you're in, they may go by other names. They're also known as associations. You may see some entities set up as LLCs, incorporations, but may still operate as a co-op. Okay? There are approximately, in the United States, there are about 30,000 co-ops. Total revenues over $500 billion. Employment nearly 1 million, and wages and benefits of about 25 billion. I want to contrast that with the number of private firms in the black community, business firms that is, their sales and their employment. In 2007, this is taken from the U.S. Census Bureau, there were almost 1 million black-owned businesses with total revenues of about $139 billion. I want you to compare that to the total revenues of about 30,000 co-ops, which I said was about $500 billion. Okay? Those, well, actually, there's let me back up. There are about 1.9 million black-owned businesses in the United States in 2007, with total revenues of about $139 billion. Okay? Now, most of that 1.9 billion, most of those were single proprietor businesses. Okay, so there were not many that were employers. As a matter of fact, only about 7, those employers, about 100,000 of those were employer businesses. And they employed almost 750,000 people. We want to contrast that again to the employment of co-ops, which are around 30,000, and employing nearly 1 million. Okay, so there's a big contrast in numbers, and we're only looking at a small industry, i.e. co-ops. What are some of the principles of co-ops? Open membership, democratic control, 1 vote per member regardless of the number of shares held, limited return on investment as contrasted with for-profit businesses. Okay? All net savings are distributed in proportion to patronage or the number of shares for each member. Some of the categories, we have categories of the co-ops that are classified in the United States. Some of them are worker co-ops, which means that their primary purpose is to provide employment for their members, okay, and for other disadvantaged people in the economy. Some are producers, which means they bring together raw materials and put together some type of marketable product for sale to their members or for the community in general. Then you have purchasing co-ops. These would generally be like businesses that come together to buy supplies and services in bulk. And then they would take those supplies and services to offer or to sell in their businesses. And then we have consumer co-ops. Some type of membership process. You're able to go in and buy products and services at discounted prices. So those are the main categories. Some of the common types of co-ops would be food. These are probably the ones. The agricultural co-ops are by far some of the largest. As a category, the consumer co-ops are the largest. About over 90% of those 30,000 are consumer co-ops. So what you have is basically consumers, pretty much like what you would have in Sam's. You have a membership. You go in, you buy products and services at discounted prices. Or they have some other type of advantage, allow you to buy in bulk or something like that. Natural resources, a lot of the utility companies will also have resources, so you'll have co-ops. You're probably familiar with housing co-ops. Credit unions are also set up in that regard. Artists, as a matter of fact, can set up co-ops in order to sell their merchandise. Purchasing co-ops, we've already talked about that as a category. Marketing, just for example, you're probably familiar with the coupons that you get in the mailings. You get one letter and it's about 20 or 30 coupons or so. That's called co-op mailing. You know, so from a marketing standpoint, there's benefits to cooperative economics as well. And then of course you have some child care facilities as well that operate as co-ops. The types of members, basically anybody can be a member of a co-op. It can be a person like you and I, it can be another business, it can be a nonprofit. Any type of business that we are allowed to engage in the United States could be a potential entity for membership in a co-op. Familiar co-op examples. Did you know Sunkist was a co-op? Ocean Spray, Land O'Lakes, very large co-op, Yellow Cab Company, and Recreational Equipment Incorporated would be some examples of co-ops that you may or may not be familiar with. Well, and then of course, germane to our discussion tonight is how do we use the idea of a co-op to develop black communities. And some strategies that we may use may create a sense of, if you think about it, it's a group of people coming together. They have a common interest, right?
Right.
And some of the requirements is that they all want to make sure that they establish bylaws, they establish criteria for their membership. So they have to come together as one in order to set this criteria. So that's important for our community because, truth be told, many of us will have discussions where we'll say that there's no unity in black communities. Okay? So here's a principle right here that we can use, a concept called a co-op, where you have to be unified. and you have to be voluntarily unified. Okay? So it may create a sense of social solidarity and cooperativeness within these communities. And then it may create viable businesses lacking in these communities. We all know the degradation of many of our cities. We can look at Dayton. It used to be a very large manufacturing city, and now the manufacturing base has been diminished over a period of about 50 years or so. Most of the companies are moving out to the suburbs and moving out of state. And we've seen very few companies come in to replace those. So it allows us to create viable businesses lacking in these communities. Why? Because we're pooling together resources of individuals as opposed to us trying to shotgun it all by ourselves, right? And that may allow them to control their internal markets, often lost to other racial or ethnic groups. We've heard the complaints about other ethnic groups coming into our communities, basically exploiting those communities and giving back very little in return. Okay, so this is an opportunity for us to regain control of our internal markets. And then this is also important too. It can serve as a platform for us to make inroads into the external markets, those in other communities and in other states and in other countries as well. So it's an opportunity for those little small businesses that we could start. There's an opportunity for us to branch into larger corporate type business. In the state of Ohio, these co-ops are generally organized as nonprofits. There is the Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 1729, does provide some guidance on that. And in Ohio, they're set up as nonprofits. But I don't know if you know this, nonprofits can own for-profits. Okay, so this is where we say that these could become a platform for launching other larger ventures. May provide employment for disadvantaged persons. You know, there are some people within our communities, they don't have the high school education, they don't have the college degree, or they may be disenfranchised. Okay? They've been to prison, they're ex-felons, and now they find it hard to find a job, so there's opportunities for co-ops to provide employment for not only for the members, but for disadvantaged groups as well. And then this is very important, an alternative means of funding business enterprises. Collective versus individual, like I said. There is a myth in our community that individualism is the way to go, whereas if you look at our historical root,
right.
Our historical root says that we were a collective people.
That's right.
But now, many of us think individually as opposed to collectively.
That's right.
Some other strategies may be used to expand operations or enter into new markets. Okay, you got profits coming in. The profits could be distributed back to the members in the form of patronage funds, right? You patronize the business, hey, there's some profits at the end. Let's take ownership of some of those profits in the form of dividends. Or let's take the profits and expand into other enterprises or lines of business. May allow them to avoid mainstream funding sources that do not favor these communities. Okay? Traditional banks are set up for big business. They aren't set up for small businesses. Okay? So cooperative co-ops may provide an opportunity for us to bypass some of that negative stigma associated with doing business within our communities. It may allow them to overcome the lack of financial support, family financial support. Many of us, when we start businesses, we go to our friends and our family, but in many of our communities, we lack those financial resources. So here's an opportunity via a co-op for us to not have to deal with the lack of resources or the paucity of resources in our communities and the lack of supportive black-owned financial centers. We've had banks before. Not many of them have survived, and not many of them are capitalized in a way where they would take chances with a number of the small businesses within our communities. Okay, those are pretty much modeled after the mainstream financial centers And as I said before, many of those banks, the traditional banks, are not set up to deal with small businesses. Okay? All right, at this point, I'm open to any questions that you may have. Yes, ma'am.
What are our plans in the African American community to start these co-ops?
Well, I can tell you right now, the Black Man's Think Tank has that on its agenda. We have that on our agenda. There are about 8 industries that we have targeted. We've already started one association which we call the Alliance of Creative Professionals. And that it's a membership organization, and its mission is to develop and support the film, fine and performing arts industries and to develop leaders in those industries. So imagine this, Dayton as a hub for film production. As an example, a lot of abandoned buildings, right? Those abandoned buildings could be potential studios. Look what you have. You have Wright State University, fine school for the performing arts. You have some other schools, Antioch I think is also one. So you have the talent pool here. All we need to do, at least our thinking, is to bring in those people in the industry that know how to do that. And we already have those people on the periphery, but the membership is important. If the membership isn't there, then our chances of being able to do that are pretty much slim to none. So in terms of a plan, the plan is there. The big thing is now is to build the membership so that we can now go to these folks that have that experience and that expertise and say, okay, here are the members. You can come on in. Okay? So there's some other industries. Let's get some other examples. Construction and skilled trades. Construction trades have been hampered here because of the recent recession, but you can be sure that it'll rebound. Our participation in it is not very much. I know that in the city of Dayton, minority contractors, well, black contractors in particular, get less, about 1% of those contracts, and that is not very productive when you consider that we're almost 50% of the population. So there are plans on the way as well to set up an association that allows us to train an apprenticeship those that have skills or have an aspiration for construction and skilled trades. Okay? Healthcare and social services.
Yeah, we're going to hold off the any more questions till the end.
Okay.
Okay. All right. And so I'll go ahead and come on up. Sure. Well, I'm going to go ahead and do mine. You have one too? Yeah. All right, and let's please give it up for our brother Marlon Aldridge. We're going to reserve the questions until the end. I see our Sister Eleanor Stocks has made it. And so I'm going to go ahead and do my presentation, and then we'll go ahead and bring our sister up, Sister Eleanor Stocks. I want to greet you all once again in the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, sir.
And my part of this is called the time and what must be done. The time and what must be done. We are taught by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad through the Honorable Louis Farrakhan that time dictates agenda. Time dictates action. If you are not in accord with the time, then you will be unsuccessful as time moves on. We read in the Bible, in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, 1 through 8, it says this: to everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to loose and a time to keep, a time to cast away and a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. In the Holy Quran, we read, by the time, surely man is in loss, except those who believe in good and exhort one another to truth and exhort one another to patience. Now, when we read that, think about that. Surely, it says, by the time, surely man is in loss, except for those who believe and do good. See, there's an action required in a time where there's much loss. It's talking about those who believe and do good. There's an action that's required. And exhort one another to truth. See, we're here today to tell the truth to the black community about cooperative economics because we have been thinking with a Eurocentric mindset that is more structured on the I and the me than the us and the we. That's right. And as a result, we have been very unsuccessful. That's right. As a result, see, Raw Info Conference Series, when we first began with Brother Keith, you know, we had a few people that would come out, and during the Clinton era, times were very good. So as black people, we thought very individually, you know, as individuals, because our pockets were filled and we had a nice job. And so when you read in the Bible about Moses going to the children of Israel, he had a hard time getting into the ear of the children of Israel because even though they were in bondage, they had a desire to have what Pharaoh had. They liked Pharaoh's nice car. They liked Pharaoh's nice house. But when the plague started hitting Pharaoh and times started getting hard, then the children of Israel started sounding like the children in the valley of dry bones. They were full of despair. And so the four winds are now blowing on the black community. And it says that the dry bones came together, they stood up, and they became an increasingly great army. That's right. That's beautiful. Now, when we look at the time that we're in right now, there's a lot of people who are in pain. And the reason that we have to understand the time, brothers and sisters, that I don't know for us as men if we've ever been in the labor room, but there's a lot of pain when a new child is about to be born. I was blessed to be in the labor room for both of my children, and it was, I'm sure, a painful experience for the mother, but it was a painful experience for the husband or for the man to see the woman that he loves going through that experience. But in order for the child to be born, both the mother and the child have to fight death in order to bring in new life. So here we're looking at a country that is on its way down. And it's collapsing in on its own immorality. But as my brother who's in physics says that there's a law that two things can't occupy the same space at the same time. So as one is falling, another will have to take its place. So the Bible says that the head will become the tail and the tail will become the head. But let us look at this real quick. According to the State of African American Consumer Report, black buying power is expected to reach $1.1 trillion in the year 2015. With a buying power nearly $1 trillion annually, if blacks were a country, they'd be the 16th largest country in the world with approximately 200 nations in the world. So out of those 200 nations, the black community, if we were a separate community, a separate nation, of our own, we will be the 16th largest nation in the world. Now, I want to put this in perspective. That means that we would be ahead of the Netherlands. That means these are nations with people that have to maintain these people. Think about this, black man and woman, because what I say after this is going to be shocking. Because, so let me go on. The Netherlands, Turkey, Indonesia, Switzerland, these are all countries that are behind us. Poland, Belgium, Sweden, Saudi Arabia, the Republic of China, Taiwan, Norway, I won't go on, but those, to put the buying power that we have in perspective, then you begin to understand that if we were to think as a community, as a nation, then we would be a lot better off than we are right now. But look at where we are right now. The gap between rich and poor has widened. Wealth is more and more concentrated among a select few, and those few are mostly white. The median wealth of white household is now 20 times that of black households, and 18 times that of Hispanic households, according to the Pew Research report. Black unemployment has been roughly double that of whites since the government started tracking the figures in 1972. The Labor Department said that employers added a net 200,000 jobs last month, and the unemployment rate fell to 8.5%, the lowest since February. The rate has dropped for 4 straight months. But listen to this. But black unemployment rose from 15.1% to 15.8% overall, and from 39.6% to 42.1% among African American teens. When we think about that, then what we have to begin to do as a people is, I want to give us a picture, hopefully, an analogy of what, I wish I had $1. Does anybody have $1? I didn't bring one on me. Because, let me see this dollar right here. Thank you, brother. I will. Yes, sir. Now, when we see this dollar, many of us see this dollar as paper. I want you all to not see this dollar as paper right now. I want you to see this dollar as blood. And I want you to think of this dollar as blood coursing through your body. Have you all ever seen the Discovery Channel or anything like that where they show you blood racing through the veins and through the arteries? Well, if we were to look down at the black community, we would see not too much movement, not too much blood flowing through the body of the black community. So let's look at this. Let's look at blood. Every cell in the body gets its nutrients from blood. Oxygen is also carried throughout the body to every cell in the body. So if the body is not, if blood is not flowing to a particular part of the body, that part will eventually die. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
When we look at certain institutions in our community, would you say that certain institutions in our community are dying off,
Absolutely.
have disappeared,
Yes, sir.
and we no longer see them? All blood is produced in the bone marrow. Bones that produce blood are called red marrow. Bones that do not produce blood are called yellow marrow. So cell is institutions, blood is the black community, nutrients is funding, and blood is money. So every institution in the black community has to be funded by money. If there is no money, that institution will die. So how does it look when a body begins to lose blood? Let's look at the signs of what happens to a person when they begin to have blood loss. It says that you can lose up to 40%, or about 2.2 24 liters before the adult can no longer compensate and will die. Symptoms of too much blood loss and how they relate to the economic condition of the black community are this. When you begin to lose blood, you begin to experience dizziness and disorientation. Now, if you look at us as a people, we greet each other not with the greetings of Assalamu alaikum or Shalom, which means peace, but we greet each other in the greeting words of what's up, what's happening. Because we are disoriented and dizzy. We don't know what direction we're going in. Another sign of loss of blood is blurry vision. The Bible says, where there is no vision, the people perish. Are we perishing as a people? We have to see this is raw info. We got to deal with the facts as they are and stop living in this delusional world thinking that everything is all right when everything is seriously wrong.
That's right.
Nausea and vomiting. Now, when you experience nausea and vomiting, you're sick. And as a community, we are very sick. But we're sick on all three levels: mentally, physically, and spiritually or morally. And last, shock. The body goes into shock. The Holy Quran says in Surah 22, 1 through 4, O people, keep your duty to your Lord. Surely the shock of the hour is a grievous thing. The day you see it, every woman giving suck will forget her suckling, and every pregnant one will lay down her burden. And thou wilt see men as drunken, yet they will not be drunken. But the chastisement of Allah will be severe. Let me say the reason why it's so severe, particularly to us as black people. Every creature that's born into this universe is born with a purpose. One of the main purposes that it's born with is to do something for itself. When you see a creature, when you see a bird, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan gives an example, or you see any creature, you don't go see the bird, the blue bird, going to the red bird, asking for the red bird, can you build my nest for me, do you? You see the red bird and the blue bird and all the animals doing something for themselves. So when we look at the black community, we have to understand that cooperative economics is when we pull our money together and we begin to do something for self. Now I'm going to go ahead and begin to wrap this up, but I want to go into a little bit of history because I think we have to understand how we got in this condition that we're in. I don't know if you all know that after slavery, that we owned as black people in the beginning of the 21st century 16 million acres of land. Blacks built over 60 successful towns. Think about that. This is before integration. One of the well-known towns was Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma in the 1920s. Now listen to what Black Wall Street had. Black Wall Street had 21 restaurants, 21 churches. That's about the same today in the black community, 21 churches on every corner. 30 grocery stores, 1 library, 2 movie theaters. Now look, they're doing better than we are right here on the west side of Dayton, because we don't have any movie theaters. 1 hospital, better than we are. 1 post office. Now this is what they own. 1 schools, law offices, 1 bank, a half a dozen private airplanes, and a bus system. What happened, brothers and sisters, to those black townships? Well, as we begin to grow, you have to understand that many of us were the blacksmiths. We were the engineers. We were the ones who built the White House. It was the slave masters who loaned out their slaves to help build the White House. We were the ones who basically built America. And they said that to see a hammer in the hands of a white person was like seeing a naked person running down the street today. So in other words, when we got out of slavery, we were still the ones who were being employed and building things. So what happened was that many of us, we began to build, and we were in government, and we were very influential. But then rose the night riders, and along with the government itself, they began to destroy black towns. They began to destroy our towns and doing something for self. So here we have, in less than 12 hours, Black Wall Street was destroyed. The first time in American history, a black town was bombed. We look at the World Trade Centers, Black Wall Street was the first time it was bombed. On the false charges that a young man molested a white woman, 600 successful businesses were burned to the ground and 3,000 blacks were massacred. Now, as this assault was on many townships, blacks in the South wanted to get away from that type of oppressive behavior. And so you had a flight to the north, right? Well, once we began to have a flight to the north, then because we wanted jobs and we weren't allowed to build our own, then you had Martin Luther King pushing for integration. Because segregation, we couldn't build our own, so then we began to integrate, but what we found out that this was all a move by the slave master's children to make sure that we wouldn't begin to build a paradise for ourselves. So here you have it, and this will wrap this up, that we have to get back into understanding that to be separated is not a bad thing. And I'll give you an example. I have been to New York, I have been to Philadelphia, I have been out to California, and in each of those places that I go to, there's what's called a Chinatown. A Chinatown. There is Little Italy down in Florida. And there's other types of ghettos, if you will, not the ghettos that we know of as black people, but ghettos where you have a congregation of a certain ethnic group or race of people. Now in Chinatown, when I went there, it was so beautiful because I saw Chinese writing, I saw Chinese people in Chinatown, and this is the counter where you purchase something, and guess what? There was no bulletproof glass. There was a Chinese a person on the one side of the counter, and there was a Chinese person on the other side of the counter, giving that Chinese on the other side of the counter that Chinese money. Did you know that in Black Wall Street that the dollar circulated 36 to 100 times? Sometimes it took 1 year for that dollar to leave the black community. But now, listen to what happens. Now the dollar leaves the black community in 15 minutes. Brothers and sisters, to wrap this up, if you give blood, if you've ever gone down to the blood bank and gave blood, you can give blood twice a week. But then they tell you can't come back and give blood because you can't give too much blood because you'll become anemic, and if you have too much loss of blood, you will die. Well, the black community is dying because we don't understand that this is the blood that keeps the black community alive. This is also a form of energy. This is energy right here. Whatever you put this energy into, it gives it power. So what we have in essence been doing is empowering other ethnic groups, and we have been taking the power away from ourselves. Why? Because we have been taught to get that nice car with the 20s, or to get those nice new shoes because that's the style. $120, but they got slave labor making them for $20? Brothers and sisters, we have to have a new mind going into this new year, and we have to have cooperative economics. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and rest, and at the end, hopefully we'll have some questions and answers. But right now, I want to bring on the podium now a guru, a business guru. It is something that, as Brother Keith said in their latest SCLC banquet, that our sister paid close attention to what our sister has to say. Please give a warm welcome to Sister Eleanor Stocks, President of the African American Chamber of Commerce.
Good evening, everyone. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here this evening and to be a part of this assembly where we are realizing that we have lost a little bit in the game, and it's time to reposition, regroup, and move forward.
Yes.
It's very serious.
Yes, it is.
And as the brother was speaking about how the collectiveness of the Hispanics, the collectiveness of the Asians, the collectiveness of the people in China or in San Francisco where there are towns, that was once us. So we really have set the template for those who have are following us. We set that template. As I said a few nights ago, that when I was a child, and that was a long time ago, we had more black businesses than we have today. I could go down when I was young on 5th Street and everything there was owned by black people. Drugstores, doctor's offices, people who would loan folks money, shoes, appliance stores. Those things did exist in this town. Integration, I believe, but it was a process. Sometimes we have to go through the process to get to where we need to go back. Integration did affect us because my mom, I'm in business today, and I never thought that I would be in business, but she was in business as long as I remember and was very successful at what she did. However, I didn't think that was so great. I thought I had to go and get my education and, you know, teach school and teach on the college level and do all these other things that were not as business. Anybody could do business. And so I had a rude awakening when my mom died unexpectedly, and I had to kind of assume a lot of her responsibilities. And at that particular point, it hit me smack dab in the face. I remember that she had salons, and I'm coming into the salon with a personnel policy for the stylist. That was a joke. And it was a fact, because I had headed up the Urban League, and I had several staff running organizations and taking trash and hauling contracts for that city. And that was not going to work. There was a new game, there was a new day for me, and I had a rude awakening, and I found out that I didn't know anything. And it was about the people powerness. It was about the use of the dollar in her industry that provided her the success. So I guess tonight I'm here to say that we can change some of these things. And I just got tired of trying to change everybody, because I used to advocate all the time. When I saw $627 million coming to the city of Dayton, where 70% of the kids were black, and most of the people that lived in the community were black, I said, what the heck? We're going to have a good time, right? Because there's some money, some people who are ready can make some money, and we began to track the numbers and the expenses of the school system, so much so that we were literally hated. But we were recognized on a national scale. Washington, D.C. picked up on some of the articles that we had. We wouldn't just talk about them. We would come to the meetings with the data. We said, this is how much money you spent. Here are the people that got the contract. This is less than 1% of the community, and we passed it out. See, one of the things you have to stop doing is talking rhetoric. You have to really get down to the facts, because, see, people don't listen to you. And so every time we call the meetings, we have 60 to 100 people out there. Unfortunately, so many of them could not take advantage of the opportunity. They really could not. They could do the sub work, but they couldn't do the overall contracts, and that was disappointing. We would meet with the superintendent, and we would say, this is what we want to do. That's when they open the doors to you. And we would go right outside and have a press conference right in front of the school board. We would call contractors and we would say, they have spent over $10 million and less than 1% have gone to blacks, and here are the numbers. You want to know, come and look at the facts. That it really bothered them so much that they stopped me from getting, and this is why we were in the National Sunshine Week out of Washington. Because we said we have a right to know. If you're in public office, we have a right to get your paperwork and your facts. And so that gave us access to their numbers and their data. And they couldn't deny that. And so when we started getting their data and how the money was being spent relative to these school districts, then they started stopping us from getting the data because we were really giving this information out. We testified in Columbus. We got calls from Bush, who was running then. I mean, people were calling us about everything. Boehner was sending letters because we were really getting to a source of money.
Right.
And money is something that people don't want to give up, because there were a lot of white contractors that were positioned and lined up to make hundreds, millions of dollars.
Right.
And they're still finishing off the schools now. So what I said, I kind of pulled away from it because you didn't find the coalition of the black community, because they really didn't understand all of it. And so here I'm getting beaten up. I said, I don't need to get beat up for this.
Right.
So I said, I will do something that I believe is important. And so we started the chamber. We started trying to bring people around business because they were forgetting business. And I always was a member, even with my mom's business, with the Dayton Chamber. I think you should be a member of the Dayton Chamber.
Yes.
I'm not saying, if you're in business, go for it all the way. So I was a member there. Then I started getting into organizations and the groups, so I knew what was going on there, but I knew we were out of the loop. And we're still out of the loop. We're not there, and we're not there primarily because we've lost a sense of community. And that's back to what you're saying. We have lost supporting one another. We're so like crabs, some people are, not all of us, crabs in a barrel. So what I said, we can't bring the whole club along, but we'll bring the ones that we can. So we began to move with the African American Chamber, and we began to do things, but also I began to notice that I was on committees, Dayton Coalition, any committee around here, I've been on it. That's not an excitement for me anymore. When they flew to Washington, they would say, oh, we fly her free, let her go to Washington, they're going to be negotiating for Wright. Good, that's a great place. So I'm flying free, you know, going up, meeting with the politicians and all of that, but there was nothing there that I saw that could directly affect you and me.
Come on.
And it was after so many years of that, I said, that's it. That's it. You try to bring the people along of like minds. And the word speaks about like minds.
Yes.
And this is how we tried to start the chamber. Those of like minds. That's very key to whatever you're going to do. And if they're not like minds, you have to really let them go on. But it could take a small group to make a change. So as I began to move forward, then I had a business. I ran a retail business for over 12 years, was the first black at the Fairfield Mall with a store there. We were offered to take our store, not only that particular store, but another store to a Columbus Mall. We would do the shows for the Beaver Creek Chamber. Oh yeah, we were, you know, it's all work. I was flying in and out of the state, getting and buying, but I still didn't make it. It wasn't that big deal. I mean, I could make X amount of dollars at one store, but to really get into the big game, it would take multiple stores. And I realized that. I said, how can I do multiple stores? I don't even have enough money to open another store, to staff that store, and to make that store work when this one is working. How can I do that? It was impossible. The business model that I had that could have grown, I did not have the capital to make it move forward. And then I began to look at, now what possibly could I make if I had several stores? If I made $20,000 a month in the mall, that was pretty good for some people, but really wasn't that good if you really want to get at the big bucks. So I said, no, we closed the store because I don't like working 7 days a week.
Right.
I don't like having to be at the mall or having my staff to be at the mall. If they're not there, I have to be there. So it didn't get to be, it wasn't fun anymore. So as I began to move throughout, I said money is kind of stalling and stopping us in so many ways. Because we got great ideas. We've invented a lot of things. We've created a lot of things that people are utilizing today. So I decided that I want to be a developer. And that's what I am today.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Lord. And one of the ways that happened, I had friends that were, I had an architect friend, Charles McAfee, who's, you go on the website, look him up, multi-million-dollar man. I was with the National Business League, and another thing, get in organizations that help you to grow. So if I did get it in Dayton, when I got on the national board, I met folks that were doing all kinds of phenomenal things. And so we became friends, and I knew he was a big guy who, did you remember meeting Charles? Who came to Dayton, and I said, he's building, he got an architectural firm in Atlanta, his daughter runs that, he has one in Dallas, Texas, he has one in Wichita. What do you do? Ask questions. How did you do it? Ask questions. Get information. Ask questions. And so at that particular point, I got intrigued by what he was saying to me, and at some point, I started looking for land.
Come on, land.
I started looking for land, and I found some. And I found the land and took the land out. And then I called Charles. Charles, I got this land. I don't know what to do with it. I have no idea about development, but this is what I think I'd like to do. He said, well, you know, he's an entrepreneur. He seeks opportunity, so it really wasn't about me. It was about what opportunity they could acquire from that, but I would be helped along the way. So the long and short of the story, they flew in town. I paid them for a development plan because I didn't know how to put one together, but they did. And then when they started telling me what to do this, I said, stop. I own the land. I paid you for the plan. I'm getting ready to move on my own at this point. And so what we have done, and this year is the year we'll move dirt. What we have done, we have put together a team of people, and you find your team wherever you can gather them. Wherever they are willing to work for you. Even though we want our race to be unified, that we don't want to ever give up. But we have to understand that there might be others who have more knowledge than we do, and if they're willing to share that knowledge with you, go for it. And the long and short, and I'll get to this capital piece, I contacted some of the biggest firms in this town who do development, law firm. I mean, who built the Green? This firm oversaw it. Let me give them a call. Because Charles would have brought people in here to build this, and we would not have had any activity in it other than we being cleared out in terms of what the land cost would be against the development. So I said it has to be local because all the projects that we have been pushing are projects that are either by the state or some other big group, and we don't have a part in it. So in this way, when he was telling me what to do, I said, if that's what a developer does, I can do that. So I'll be that. So Charles didn't like that. But at any rate, I pulled this team together of everybody I thought I needed. Architectural firm in Dayton, who want to keep the money here. A law firm that does development. Do you know those people gladly responded? Can you believe that? And so I said, when I gathered all of them, and I pulled Messer, they moved to town. Now the only reason I pulled them in is because, and they could be put out, but I pulled them in because they would allow any of the building that they would do, at least 15 to 20% would go to minorities. And no one had ever espoused that here in this area. This is what we plan to do. We don't have any money here for you now, but we are going to make some money, hopefully. And if we do, we'll pay you. If we don't, we can't. Do you know those people met with me, did all that geotechnical work, determined how far they had to go down to get the water table? Do you know that? Do you know they surveyed the land, and less land than I thought I had, we had more? So I'm saying that to say, we're still on that mission. When you see that mission comes to fruition, then that will be a joy. And even if today we would pass that on, it's still going to be something of value. But to bring that down to where I think we need to go, it's capital. We don't have the money. So, and I would, in fact, we're seeking a lot of money now from people who are offering money. Okay, we have about 16 million on the table right now. And that 16 million is from basically the city and what they can do. When you do development, there are certain things they can do. They can do road infrastructure and that kind of stuff. That's worth 6 million. Good, thanks, put it down, we'll have that. And then we have another company that's willing to put up 10 million. And there's a reason for why they're able to put that up, because there would be certain fire systems in the building that they could lease to us. So everybody wants something for something. It's not, just getting something for nothing. So we're down now to 2 million. And that 2 million will be leveraged off of, which I hope to be, famous black people from Dayton, Ohio, who can come back home with the credit worthiness and to be the central holding team of this. It's not about me owning it. I don't want to own it. Central holding team to leverage that so the money will flow and we can begin to structure. And there's so many outstanding people who've left this town who've done well, can't even think of a project where they can even do anything, where they can even put the money. Who's asking them?
Right.
No one's asking them. And then I saw Magic Johnson on TV, Monique's the other night. He's talking about, he called me, we're looking for businesses, we want to get them started, so forth, so on. He's a partner with the Dayton Dragons. Do you hear what I'm saying? He's already vested in this area. He's looking for the kinds of projects that we're looking for. So that's where that is, and so this April will bring in investors into town, people that we think might have an interest, who have the financial wherewithal, who want to give back to Dayton, who will have an opportunity to be a part of something that they can be proud of. But the long and short of what I want to end up with is, how do we build a capital structure to get some money? And so when the chamber started, we kept saying, the banks will give you enough to fail. That's what I know. They're not going to give you a whole bunch. And one of the things we do know about small businesses, and this is very important, so you might go through 2 or 3 businesses before you get to where you need to be. So don't feel disappointed, because that's a part of your growing process. Out of most businesses that open within 1 to 3 years, half of them are out of business. That's a fact, okay? And then out of the ones that are still there after 3 years, that have up to 5 years, most of them out of business. So small businesses sometimes will have a short life. That's why we honored Mrs. Huffey this year. At the African American, we honored 7 business people. And it was Mrs. Huffey. They have been there for years. Right. And they're still going on. And she's a vegetarian. That was so wonderful. It was just delightful. But anyway, so once we know this, then we know that basically people say, do a business plan, they'll tell you that. And you go through that. And so you might run through that. But that's not all of what you need. A credible business model. Talk to the people who you see are doing well, who will give you the time talk to them and ask them the kind of questions. And most times banks will give you at least enough money for 3 years, but they're not going to give you any more than that. So the chamber started thinking, what can we do? The churches are the strongest economic development institutions we have in the city of Dayton.
Right.
I go to this one church occasionally, they've raised over $500,000. They're up to raise $1 million. So how do they raise it? They raise it by people giving offerings. Collective.
Right.
So we were saying, now wait a minute. If we and then we were also saying institutions will give you, like they used to give you $5,000 for this little program, $10,000 for that. And one of the other things I noticed that we have these events at the convention center and we eat $35,000. That's what your bill is with all the people that are eating. At one event. So in my estimation, that's sort of a waste. You probably will never see the chamber doing a dinner where you sit down and eat. We have to think about how we can take this money and make this money work. So the plan is, basically, is that we build a capital fund.
Yeah.
And that fund, and there can be several, but I would say just build one. Let it be a template. And that fund, for instance, we want to raise $1 million. How can you raise $1 million? Give me 5 companies that give us $20,000, right? Or give me 10 companies that get a 10, or break it down even further. However you can get it. So you don't take money to do a brochure or do something that's going to be ephemeral that will be thrown away. But do a fund. Establish a fund manager. Set it up as either as a nonprofit, or it could be a profit, or a foundation. And with that, the underwriting criteria, of course, whoever puts the money in can help to write the underwriting criteria. That means how you're going to be able to access it if you want to borrow some from that fund, because they're going to expect you to pay it back. There were times when I was in business that I needed $500. Just $500. I said, God, I got this shipment that's coming in, I don't have $500. I don't have $30 to get this thing out. Where you really need some money. And you go to your family members and those folks, sometimes they don't have it. But if you have this fund, this money is going to still be growing. And people who contribute in that fund, they will be members to that fund and will have access to the fund, and then you would set up how the access would work. Because when we start working with money, it gets a little sticky. So you want a third party doing this. And I believe if we begin to start this kind of fund, capital fund, I believe it will help us. And I've spoken with some people with the foundation. You know how the African American Foundation has raised a lot of money? I believe if we could get that particular entity to buy into this, sometimes they don't want to. They want to be the first one to come. People want to be the first to come up with something. That defeats the purpose. But I believe we need to try that first. Try to see, are you guys, this is what we believe will help businesses to grow and expand, especially black businesses. We represent less than 2% of the businesses here. We are 43% blacks in this particular time. This town. We have only 4,000. The latest census report, there was 4,000 Hispanics in Dayton. There were 1,200 Asians in Dayton. I said on the census report. And the Asians own most of the cell phone places, right? And the hair care places, they're Korean owned, right?
Right.
All right, so what in essence has happened, they've taken over the industries, our industries, and they are servicing us, and they're giving little or nothing back to the community. So with that said, that kind of information you need, not that you want to run them out, but you need to know that, hey, we know you. Right. And then it was so hard for one gentleman out of Pickwood, a black man, who was trying to open his own hair care place. He went to New York, and they made him pay cash. So they are controlling the market. That's our market. And in Dayton alone, we have $700 million of purchasing power. $700 million. Do you know that's a lot of money? Dayton and the surrounding areas. Actually, that means a lot to a lot of people. So we are the biggest purchasers here. We have the biggest stake in the fight. We have the number of people here. We just need to get a few people on the same page. It would be nice if we had capital funds all over. But if we started one and using that as a model, I think it would help us to begin to fuel businesses, grow businesses, and provide the goods and services that we need for each other. Thanks again for listening.
All right. And now what we want to do is just take a few questions and answers. And at the end, we want to give our sister, Valerie? Olivia, I'm sorry. We want to give our sister Olivia a chance to say a few words to us. Are there any questions? Yes, sister.
I adore you. You are what we all aspire. First off, you really, really are. I adore you. Macbeth left. How are we going to? Can we roll that up into the chamber, or should we start it over?
Macbeth, that's Minority Contractors and Assistance Program.
Yes.
All right. You know, we knew they weren't going to survive.
Of course.
We tried to work with them. We tried to tell them, but again, it's territorial. And guess who got it? We had 1 year applied for the grant, but the guy that I work with put some of the wrong demographic data in there, which caused our project to be rejected. The African American Chamber in Cincinnati got it. You hear what I'm saying?
We're going to have a conversation.
Okay, now, what needs to happen in Dayton? I will be meeting with the group on January 30th. You know they're building Germantown Village.
Yes, I heard that.
All right, so that's a big project, and the gentleman who got the contract is out of Cincinnati. He's a black guy. He got the contract. So they are looking for all kinds of subcontractors and different people, because now they're trying to be really inclusive within the community. So a lot of development is going on. So there needs to be a way we can put our heads together, make sure we get some folks like that out.
Well, and what I'm asking too is, where did the Dodge reports go? And you know, all of that stuff.
Down in Cincinnati. People have to leave and go to Cincinnati. And that's a disgrace for the city of Dayton, really. It's a disgrace. So there needs to be an effort.
Yes, go ahead.
To get that back.
Okay, all right.
Sometimes you find people within the city that are a little bit sensitive and don't, and I'm not talking about anyone in particular, but they're territorial. And this is a big loss. Do you know, they had that for years. And we kept trying to tell them.
What do they say? As God is my witness,
here it is.
We're going to bring that back.
Oh, thank you.
We're
Love it.
back.
Thank you.
One of the things that I wanted to bring attention to is my for-profit organization. We own an internet radio station that we purchased, 24 hours, 7 days a week. Now, what we want to do is we want to work with the African American Chamber of Commerce, the Black Man's Think Tank, and other organizations that focus on business development. And I think that we need to start producing a program where we can have it to at least where we have it once or twice a week, where individuals can call in and get get information on how to start a business, how to maintain a business, just anything to do with business. Because as people, the word entrepreneurship, many of us think, why are you speaking Arabic? Why are you speaking Chinese? Entrepreneurship is not a language that many of our families understand. And when you say that you want to go into business for yourself, then you are looked at as almost, they're ready to put a straitjacket on you to where the sleeves tie in the front. So we have to begin to, once again, teach our people entrepreneurship. And one of the things that we have to begin, and I want to say that go to the Ohio Ebony Network, OhioEbonyNetwork.com. That's OhioEbonyNetwork.com, where we have built a business site where businesses can join that site and they can post for themselves their products and services, so that we'll have a place on the web where, in a central location, where we can find a doctor, where we can find a plumber. Because one of the things that my brother, Brother Marlon, always talks about is that even if we wanted to spend our dollar in the community, we don't really know where to spend our dollar. Because when you look at the green and the malls, they're all centrally located. But ours in Dayton is spread out in many different locations, and we don't know where a plumber or a dentist's office is, or if it's there in our community, is it even black owned? So we built this site, and so we encourage all businesses and individuals to join that site and to begin to understand that we have to begin to pool our resources and do just what, you know, here you have the Mexicans coming across the border because of NAFTA and GATT. They destroyed the farmers. And the reason why the Mexicans are coming across the border is not because they want to, it's because they have to, because the American corporations went down there and destroyed their farmers. But the hypocrites on the media don't want to tell you that aspect, nor do they want to tell you the reason why we had to go for integration, because we were doing fine before the Night Riders. And so what we need to do is we have to come back into that understanding now, because if we got 15% unemployment, what Obama can do is give a few people a job. The best he can do, because if the employers are white, then they're going to buy, it's intelligent. We can't even blame white people for employing their own children. So here we are in Iraq. We blame white people for 95% of our problems, but we spend 75% of our money with them. And so once again, that gives energy to them to a certain degree, keep us in our oppressive condition. And so,
you know, it's really about us. And, you know, that's with anything you're doing. It's about you. And you have the potential, you have the knowledge to seek the knowledge, to do anything you want to do. You will find young people coming out of the most horrible being very successful. Believe me, there is a purpose for us. And sometimes you don't know what it is, but you keep moving toward that purpose, and hopefully you'll find it. And what I think that I hope that you'll gain from this tonight, whether it's this meeting or what that you might leave here and decide in your own little group. This is what I think I'd like to do. Begin to reach out to people. And when you reach out, you will find what you're looking for. Okay? You will find it. And I hope that little groups will start on whatever it is you want to do. Because you only come around here once. I haven't seen anybody come back. Right. But let's take advantage of this, and there's anything I can do to share any information. Anybody sitting here, we don't care what color they are. We're not limited. If they're human beings, hey, you have information, we can share the information because we're in this thing together. But we got to help ourselves first to build ourselves back up, and that's necessary indeed. Marketing, so we see those. So we need to convert those to something that's more productive. Thank you.
Let me target this down here.
Yeah, Marlon, I know I had a chance to go to the Black Man's Think Tank, and I know it's an annual event. You have the speakers, or sometimes you have a keynote speaker. And have you booked a keynote speaker for this upcoming Black Man's?
We're still planning right now. Since you bring that up, we have put out a request for proposals, which are due the 31st of this month. Go to the website, dmtt.org, if you'd like to submit a proposal. The conference is going to be April 13th and 14th. The theme for this year is Unity, a call for the development of our cultural and social assets. And that's pretty much what we're talking about here. At least we're trying to talk about is what can we do. You know, at the tank, you say that, well, you can set up banks, you can set up funds or what have you, you can set up whatever. But unless we can set up all of those things that we have set up, we've had all kinds of data. But the thing is, if you don't have the relationship among us and the trust, I don't care if it's Dayton used to have a black-owned bank. Black-owned bank is no longer here because there were not enough businesses to support the bank. So, yeah, we can set up whatever, but if it's a system in total, then whatever we set up is going to fail. We can do development all day of the week, but if we're not the ones employing folks that look like us, then the development only, helps the few that actually have shares in the development.
Not really.
So there's other, you guys mentioned the agency down town, the city was closed down.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that there weren't enough businesses that had the capability to do what they needed to do to participate in city contracts. For example, if you're a contractor, you couldn't get the bonding, if you had to get that. If you needed a labor pool, you didn't know where to get that. We definitely didn't have a labor pool of young folks that had those kind of skills, that were participating in some kind of apprenticeship program, that were participating in some type of training program. So these are the little small things that we neglect. We look at the big picture items because we're mimicking what we see in the mainstream. See, the mainstream has had way more years to develop these systems, and they have far more relationships than we have. See, we don't have relationships. If you listen to what the underlying that people are territorial. Our people are territorial. See, we live in a country which touts individualism, but if you look at language, what you will see is a collective. When you hear words like union, it doesn't sound like a bunch of individuals to me. It sounds like a collective. When you hear the word co-op, it doesn't sound like a bunch of individuals to me. It sounds like a collective. And we can go on and on with that. Publicly traded companies, that doesn't sound like a bunch of individuals to me. That sounds like a collective. So these are the systems that I'm talking about that must be in place first before all of these other objects, i.e. banks, and all of these other things are put in place. This is the part that we as a community are missing. And the reason that we're missing it is because our best and our brightest have been integrated into the mainstream, so they develop those organizations. So what you see left in our communities is a vacuum. See, that's what you really see inside of Dayton. You see a lot of abandoned buildings. You see our best and our brightest graduating from the Wright states, graduating from the Central States and the Wilberforces and all of the other institutions. And you see them headed toward the mainstream, and they never look back and consider that the vacuum that they've created in their own communities. All right? And then these systems that we're talking about, these systems have a direct correlation with mental illness and misbehavior in black communities.
Yeah.
These penal systems that are set up to commoditize and monetize our people and keep them cycling back in. The employment, who does the penal system employ? It's not us, right? Look at the educational system. It's not educating us, so there must be some benefit to it because they continue to run it. Who's benefiting from the educational system? It's definitely not us in large numbers. We could go on and on with that. Who's benefiting from the political system? It's definitely not us. These systems that I'm talking about, what they have in common are relationships among people, certain classes of people. That's what a system is. First and foremost, it's a relationship. So we can talk all day of the week, and then I'll shut up, and I know I can talk. Is that if we don't have systems in place built on relationships, then everything else that you do in vain. I don't care what kind of textbooks you use. I don't care how many new schools that you build. If the relationship's there, everything that you do is in vain.
I wanted to say one thing, though. What we saw with the contractors when we were going with the schools, we saw that they had the ability to do certain jobs. Okay, if they laid brick, they could lay bricks. If they plastered walls, they could do that. What we saw was the system kind of excluded them because they had to have certain credentials. So that's why we then proposed a business service center, because we began to see the disconnect. But when you find a general contractor coming in, they are looking for those people. And so we just didn't have a way to at that time, we were late to be able to culture those people and bring them in so they could be utilized. Then we didn't have enough voice in the community that understood the business issues that could rally around it. So he's right that there is a system, but within that system, you can propose a kind of structure that might help to filter them through. You had some listening ears and some people who were willing to work, and this is what we saw. And that's why I became frustrated, because I didn't see how that system could get in place where we could funnel those people. And here this guy who has 6 homes that he's going to be building, calling now, and he's asking for that kind of person. He's asking for the subs. Just bring me the subs. We'll take drywall. They don't have to do any certification or anything. We are certified. We'll put them under our umbrella. So that has changed since some time back. So, and back to the point, in the development, if you can sell doorknobs and locks, I'll have something to say about that. So,
one of the things that I wanted to just point out that our community could do now, is I want you all to think. I think it was Sister Eleanor who talked, or Brother Marlon, one of them talked about the church. And think about this. Here every Sunday, we congregate in one place every Sunday as a mass of people. Now imagine if we, but imagine if we stopped throwing the purses up in the air and running up and down the aisles and singing. And at least for 15 minutes of the service, we dealt with economic development. Imagine, I mean, I know it's unimaginable to do that today in the church, but imagine that. Imagine if the churches, all of them, said that we want all of you who have a business and all of you who have a business skill to come up here or to turn in your contact information so that we can compile a book. Then imagine the unimaginable, that all the churches work together and put the books together. This is what we have on earth. Well, see, this is the things that we definitely need to know. But imagine if we did that, and then imagine if the preacher would instruct the congregation to support those businesses. See, a lot of times we love to throw off on these young people. Look at how crazy they are, the pants sagging down. But you know what? The Bible says you can tell a tree by the fruit it bears. It didn't say you can tell the fruit by the tree. You can tell the tree by the fruit. So it's the elders in the community who are the real failures. They are the real disgrace, because it's the elders in the community who are supposed to build a base for the youth to come after them to live off of. But the young people, they don't see anything coming from the elders, except for another chicken or chitlin dinner being served at the church, at the mosque, because we got in all the religious institutions. So there's a saying that some of us are so heavenly minded we know earthly good. But if you go back to an Eastern culture, there's no such thing as the mind, the body, and the soul being separated. They're all one. So if you got a sick mind, you got a sick body. If you got a sick spirit, you got a sick mind. They're all interrelated. So, and one last thing. Colorblind. We have to stop talking about we want a colorblind society. I think it's only the African American or the black community who talks about a colorblind society. For me, I like seeing color. I like seeing the different colored roses and different colored flowers. I don't want to see every flower in a gray, washed out, monotone look. So in society, we need to see color because the black community has something to offer. The white community has something to offer. The Asian community has something to offer. We don't want everybody to be cookie cutter molds. So as black people, we need to look at what's successful. When we look at the Asian people, they're successful because they keep that money circulating. We always talk about how the Jewish community is successful. And we know that the Jewish community, not only do they keep their money in their own pocket, but they got a state called Israel. And they defend that state too. When my brother talked about cooperative economics, you want to talk about the lobbying power of the Jews. See, there's no such thing as politics without economics. If you don't have, that's what the Honorable Louis Farrakhan said, if you don't have economics, you can throw your little one ballot all you want, but there's this huge corporation that crushes your one vote. So if we come together and we begin to realize this as a community, it don't have nothing to do with racism. It has everything to do with being intelligent. So with that, I would love for us to, if we haven't, to look at what's called the Willie Lynch mentality, where fear, distrust, and envy was used by the social architects or the social engineers to keep us at variance with each other. The man against the woman. Look at the family destroyed. You don't have a community without the basic unit of the community, which is family. We have to stop as men disrespecting our women. If we did that and we had our women stop disrespecting themselves, then you will begin to see the community with that alone begin to come up. Why? Because when people are married, they have a different view of the community than a single person. A single person, they don't mind throwing trash. But a married person, and they got family and they got children, they're thinking in the long run. They're thinking in the future. So family is very important. And we have to begin to bring our families back. And that's another solution. So the churches, if they could do this now. They don't have to have any of us to tell them. They can, one Sunday, ask all of their members to go ahead and put and compile a list of professionals and services and just start right there. And then hopefully they all compile it together. But one other thing, and that is that you have the Black Man's Think Tank, you have the African American Chamber of Commerce, you have Knowledge for Life. I believe all of us are nonprofits, right? We need the community to become active. We need, see, if I would have put on the flyer, I think I titled the flyer wrong. I should have said Chitlin dinners, or come out and see somebody bounce a ball, or maybe dance. And then you would have billions. They would have been like, we got to shut Central Wright State down. But because I said cooperative economics, then only the crickets come out. You know, but that's not because this is a failure. It's because we as a people have been so mentally damaged that we have to begin to once again begin to understand the dynamics of cooperative economics and how that works for us. And well, I hope that you all enjoyed this. I want to just read a few things here. This is from Message to the Black Man by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, chapter 76, a program for self-development. And he says, we must stop relying upon the white man and others to care for us. We must become independent people. It says, separate ourselves in the form of, as I was saying, you have Chinatown and others. And one person, they asked me, well, what if, you know, white people were to separate themselves and call it White Town? You know, I didn't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but I said, well, what do you call the malls? What do you call the green? Not the, you know, but they have it to where the buses run out there once an hour, and then you got to put on your hiking boots after you get off the bus to get there. They're subtly telling you that they really don't want you there unless you got the money to spend. Pool your resources, educate and qualifications for independence, as Sister Eleanor was talking about. Stop forcing yourself into places where you're not wanted. If they don't want you there, why are you forcing yourself there? You got hands, you got feet, you got eyes, build your own. Make your own neighborhood a decent place. You know, when you see the litter in the community, The litter in the community is a manifestation of what's on the inside of us. What's on the inside of us shows itself on the outside of us. If we had a greater love for self, then the love for self would be displayed on the outside of us in our communities. So we have to make our communities a beautiful place. And I don't know if you all know, but when you're in a nice, clean house, you just feel better. When you look around and you see clothes on the floor and things like that, you're like, I don't feel, you get depressed. I know that. That's why I pick my clothes up now. Rid yourself of the lust of wine and drink and learn to love self and kind before loving others. Because how can you love somebody else before you love yourself? See, these black leadership today, they're so hypocritical. They tell us they love for us to want to hold hands with everybody else, but you know what? Why would anybody want to hold hands with a person who don't want to do something for themselves? And this is no disrespect to people who are homeless. I'm not talking about people who are homeless. I'm talking about bums who have arms and legs and eyes but refuse to do something for self. And they come up to you and asking for $1 and want to shake your hand. You don't want to do it. Why? Because you know that they could do better. But then in a larger dynamic, when black people go to white people and talk about, can't we just get along? Why should they want to get along with us? Why should a person respect you when you don't have any respect for yourself? Unite, it's just hard talk, but it's the truth. Unite and create a future for yourself. Build your own homes, schools, hospitals, and factories. Do not seek to mix your blood through interracial integration. Now this was the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I know that that sounds hard, but let me just say this. That the social engineers have so designed the system to where our black women are really suffering. Many of us, if you have a prison population of 2 million, and you have half of that 2 million being black, then you have another sector of the society being gay. Then you have another sector of the society having AIDS, and you may think that it came from a green monkey. You might have that misunderstanding because they told us that. But remember that when it started off, it was seen as a white homosexual disease. Now all of a sudden it's devastating Africa, devastating Caribbean, devastating anywhere where black people are, you see it rampant. So now you have a large degree of black women, so we have to begin to respect our women once again. Stop buying expensive cars, clothes, and shoes before being able to live in a fine home. Many of us, we have nice cars, and the cars cost more than our homes. We should really live in the cars. Spend your money among yourselves. That's intelligent. Build an economic system among yourselves. And lastly, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, protect your women. You'll never be respected. You know, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan says that a nation is judged by how they treat their women. How they treat their women. This is, you know, a lost concept. But when we disrespect our women, we'll never get respect as a people. And with that, I guess we can go ahead and end it, unless you all want to interject anything else. Well, we have the conferences. Once again, we would like to thank Wright State for allowing us to put this conference together and to stream it live. We want to have these conferences every fourth Thursday of the month. And we want to concentrate on issues that affect our community. Many times you might hear things up here that sting a little bit, but if we as the black community can get it together, then we make Dayton a better community. If it's a shame to hear the news that 90% of the homicides take place in the black community. That's an epidemic. That's red alert. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming out. May God continue to bless you. And we will leave you as we came before you in the greeting words of peace. We'll say it in the Arabic language, Assalamu alaikum. In Hebrew, it's Shalom. For my Kemetic brothers, they say Hotep. And for my Christian brothers and sisters, we'll just simply say, praise the Lord. And may God continue to bless you.